Jason Statham wasn't the kind of guy who liked to sit still for too long. After months of grinding through back-to-back business meetings, filming schedules, and endless phone calls, he decided it was time for a break. Las Vegas seemed like the perfect place to unwind. The city was alive with bright lights, buzzing energy, and opportunities to let loose. Jason had heard about an ultra-exclusive casino tucked away in one of the fanciest hotels on the Strip. It wasn't just any casino. It was known for catering to the rich and famous, where people came to play high-stakes games and show off their wealth. Dressed casually in a leather jacket, jeans, and boots, Jason walked into the casino. He didn't feel the need to dress up like everyone else. His confidence carried him just fine. As soon as he stepped inside, he noticed how different this place felt compared to other casinos. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne mixed with polished wood. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft glows over velvet-covered tables. Dealers wore crisp uniforms, and patrons sipped champagne while chatting quietly about their wins or losses. Jason wasn't there to gamble big or impress anyone. He wanted to enjoy the atmosphere and maybe try his luck at a game or two. He strolled around observing the crowd. Some players were completely focused on their cards, their faces blank masks of concentration. Others laughed loudly, celebrating jackpots that would make most people's heads spin. Despite the exclusivity, Jason felt oddly comfortable here. Maybe it was because he'd always been good under pressure, whether it was fighting in underground rings years ago or navigating the cutthroat world of Hollywood today. As he made his way toward the bar, something unexpected happened. A waiter carrying a tray of drinks accidentally collided with Jason. Glasses clinked together, and a splash of red wine spilled onto the floor near the VIP section. Jason turned quickly, apologizing sincerely. "My fault," he said, holding up his hands. "Sorry about that." The waiter looked flustered but nodded, hurrying off to clean up the mess. Jason shrugged it off and continued walking. What he didn't realize was that this small incident had caught the attention of someone watching closely. Victor Langston, the casino manager. Victor was a tall, sharply dressed man with slicked back hair and a permanent scowl etched onto his face. He prided himself on running the classiest establishment in Vegas, and anything that disrupted the pristine image of his casino infuriated him. When Victor saw the spill happen so close to the VIP area, he immediately zeroed in on Jason. To Victor, Jason's casual attire and calm demeanor screamed outsider. Instead of brushing it off as an accident, Victor saw it as an opportunity to assert control. He marched over to Jason, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. His lips curled into a sneer as he sized Jason up. "You," Victor barked, pointing a finger. "Do you have any idea where you are? This isn't some rundown dive bar. It's a place for gentlemen. And clearly, you don't belong here." Jason blinked, surprised by the sudden hostility. Before he could respond, Victor launched into a tirade, criticizing everything from Jason's clothes to his supposed lack of manners. Other patrons began to glance over, curious about the commotion. Jason tried to stay calm, offering another apology and even cracking a lighthearted joke to ease the tension. But instead of calming down, Victor grew angrier, taking Jason's humor as mockery. Within minutes, security guards appeared, flanking Jason on either side. Victor smirked triumphantly as he ordered them to remove Jason from the premises. "Get him out of here," Victor snapped. "We don't tolerate riffraff like this." As Jason was escorted out, the humiliation burned, but not as much as the spark of determination igniting within him. As Jason stepped out of the casino, the cool night air hit his face, but it did little to soothe the heat rising in his chest. The bright lights of Las Vegas blurred around him as he replayed the scene in his mind. Victor's words echoed like a broken record. "Riffraff. Don't belong here." Each insult replayed itself with razor-sharp clarity, cutting deeper than Jason cared to admit. He wasn't used to being dismissed so easily, especially not by someone who clearly had no idea who he was. For a moment, Jason stood still on the sidewalk, watching the crowds of tourists and gamblers stream past him. Some were laughing, others arguing, but all seemed oblivious to the world outside their own bubble. It struck Jason how quickly people could judge based on appearances alone. Sure, he hadn't walked into the casino wearing a tuxedo or flashing a platinum card, but that didn't give Victor the right to treat him like dirt. Jason clenched his fists, feeling the weight of frustration building inside him. Normally, he wasn't one to hold grudges. Over the years, he'd learned to let things slide, to focus on what mattered instead of wasting energy on petty grievances. But something about this felt different. This wasn't just about pride. It was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. Victor hadn't simply kicked him out. He'd done it with such venom, such disdain, that it left a bitter taste in Jason's mouth. He started walking, his boots clicking against the pavement as he moved away from the casino. The streets of Vegas were alive with noise. Music blaring from nearby clubs, neon signs flickering above bustling bars, and the distant hum of slot machines ringing through open doors. But none of it reached Jason. His thoughts were consumed by Victor's smug face, those cold eyes filled with superiority. Jason knew men like Victor all too well. They strutted around, puffing themselves up, convinced they were untouchable because of their money or status. Men like Victor thrived on making others feel small. It gave them power. But Jason wasn't most people. He'd spent years navigating tough situations, facing opponents far more dangerous than some overconfident casino manager. And while he'd long since left behind his days as a street fighter, there was still a part of him that refused to back down when pushed too far. As much as he tried to tell himself to walk away, the idea of letting Victor get away with treating him, and likely countless others, with such disrespect gnawed at him. By the time Jason reached his hotel, his mind was racing. He dropped onto the edge of the bed, staring at the floor as pieces of a plan began to form. What if this wasn't just about revenge? What if he could turn the tables on Victor, not just embarrass him, but expose him for the arrogant bully he truly was? Jason leaned back, his gaze drifting to the ceiling. He thought about the way Victor carried himself, how entitled he acted, how quick he was to belittle someone else. People like that didn't become untouchable overnight. There had to be cracks beneath the surface, flaws hidden under the polished exterior. That's when it hit him. If Victor ran such an exclusive establishment, catering to the wealthy elite, chances are he wasn't playing entirely fair. Casinos like his often operated in gray areas, bending rules or exploiting loopholes to keep their profits flowing. Jason remembered hearing whispers about shady dealings in places like this, rigged games, under-the-table transactions, even ties to organized crime. Maybe Victor wasn't just a jerk, maybe he was dirty too. A slow smile spread across Jason's face as the gears turned faster in his head. He pulled out his phone and opened a search engine, typing in the name of the casino. Within minutes, he found articles about its history, interviews with Victor boasting about his success, and vague mentions of controversies that had been swept under the rug. Nothing concrete yet, but enough to confirm his suspicions. This wasn't just personal anymore. If Victor was involved in anything illegal, exposing it wouldn't just be satisfying. It would serve justice. Jason sat up straight, his earlier frustration replaced by a quiet determination. He wasn't going to let this go. Not now. Not after realizing the potential scope of Victor's arrogance. With a deep breath, Jason grabbed his laptop and started digging deeper, piecing together information like a puzzle. Each new detail fueled his resolve. By the time dawn broke, Jason had transformed from a man humiliated into someone with a mission. A mission to take down Victor Langston in a way he'd never forget. The next morning, Jason sat at a small cafe across from his hotel, sipping black coffee as he reviewed the notes he'd gathered overnight. His laptop was open on the table, filled with tabs of information about Victor Langston and his casino empire. The more Jason read, the clearer it became that Victor wasn't just a pompous manager. He was likely part of something much bigger. Whispers of rigged games, money laundering, and shady partnerships lurked beneath the surface of his polished operation. But proving it wouldn't be easy. It would take precision, strategy, and help from people who knew how to navigate the shadowy corners of Vegas. Jason leaned back in his chair, staring out at the bustling street. He thought about his past, the skills he'd honed over years of surviving in tough situations. While he may have left behind the gritty world of underground fighting, he hadn't forgotten what it meant to outsmart an opponent. This wasn't going to be a brawl. It was going to be a chess match, and Jason needed the right team if he wanted to win. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, landing on a name he hadn't called in years: Mia Chen. Mia was a tech genius, an old acquaintance from his days in London who could hack into almost anything. She had a reputation for being sharp-witted and fearless, qualities Jason admired. After a brief hesitation, he dialed her number. When she answered, Jason wasted no time explaining the situation. "Mia, I need your help," he said, cutting straight to the point. "I'm dealing with someone who thinks they're untouchable." Mia chuckled on the other end. "Untouchable, huh? Sounds like my kind of problem. What's the plan?" Jason outlined the basics: Victor's arrogance, the suspicious activities surrounding the casino, and the possibility of exposing him. Mia didn't hesitate. "Count me in," she replied. "But you'll owe me dinner when this is over." With Mia on board, Jason reached out to two more trusted allies. First was Rico Alvarez, a smooth-talking con artist with a knack for blending into any crowd. Rico could charm his way into conversations and extract information without raising suspicion. Then there was Elena Torres, a professional card shark who could spot a rigged game from miles away. Together, they formed a team capable of taking down even the slickest operations. That evening, Jason met them all at a quiet diner off the strip. They gathered around a corner booth, huddled over maps and blueprints Jason had printed earlier. He laid out the plan step by step, speaking in low tones so no one else could overhear. "This isn't about revenge," Jason emphasized, looking each of them in the eye. "It's about justice. If we can expose what Victor's really doing here, we're not just settling a score. We're helping people who've been taken advantage of." Mia nodded, already typing furiously on her laptop. "I'll start mapping out the casino's security system. There are blind spots, trust me. We just need to find them." Rico grinned, leaning forward. "And I'll get close to Victor himself. A guy like that loves showing off his power. All I need is 5 minutes to plant some seeds of doubt." Elena chimed in, her voice calm but confident. "Leave the gaming floor to me. I'll figure out which tables are rigged and how they're doing it." As the group finalized their roles, Jason felt a surge of confidence. Each member brought something unique to the table, and together, they were unstoppable. For the first time since being kicked out of the casino, Jason felt like he was back in control. This wasn't just about teaching Victor a lesson anymore. It was about dismantling the machine that allowed men like him to thrive unchecked. Before they parted ways, Jason reminded them of one crucial rule: no harm comes to innocent people. Our goal is to expose the truth, not create chaos. Everyone agreed, their expressions serious but determined. As Jason walked back to his hotel, he couldn't help but smile. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, Victor would learn the hard way that underestimating Jason Statham was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. The night of the operation arrived, and Jason stood in front of the mirror in his hotel room, adjusting the collar of an expensive custom-tailored suit. Gone was the casual leather jacket and rugged look from days before. Tonight, he wasn't just Jason Statham. He was Sebastian Drake, a wealthy oil tycoon with a reputation for high-stakes gambling and a penchant for luxury. His transformation was complete: sleek shoes polished to perfection, a gold watch glinting on his wrist, and sunglasses perched casually atop his head. If Victor thought Jason didn't belong last time, tonight he'd see someone who fit right into his world. Downstairs, Mia sat in a van parked a block away from the casino, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she hacked into the building's security system. She had spent hours mapping out camera angles and blind spots, identifying weak points where the team could move undetected. On her screen, live feeds flickered as she looped certain cameras, creating gaps in surveillance that would give them precious minutes to work without being noticed. "You're clear," she whispered into her earpiece, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I've got eyes everywhere." Meanwhile, Rico strolled confidently toward the casino entrance, dressed sharply in a navy blue suit with a pocket square that screamed wealth. His role was simple but critical: distract Victor and keep him occupied while the others worked their magic. As soon as he stepped inside, Rico spotted Victor near the VIP lounge, chatting with a group of well-dressed patrons. He approached smoothly, introducing himself as a rival businessman interested in acquiring the casino. "Victor Langston, I presume," Rico said with a charming smile, extending his hand. "I've heard great things about your establishment. Perhaps we can discuss its potential." Victor, ever eager to flaunt his success, immediately latched onto Rico's interest. The two men retreated to a private corner, leaving the rest of the casino staff focused solely on catering to their conversation, while Rico kept Victor talking, dropping hints about lucrative deals and industry secrets. He subtly steered the discussion toward the casino's inner workings, planting seeds of doubt about its legitimacy. Victor grew defensive, revealing more than he intended as he tried to prove his operation was above reproach. Inside the main gaming area, Alina moved gracefully between tables, blending seamlessly into the crowd. Her sharp eyes scanned each game, analyzing patterns and spotting irregularities. At one blackjack table, she noticed the dealer consistently dealing winning hands to specific players, a clear sign of foul play. At another, she caught subtle signals passed between staff members when bets were placed. Every detail was noted and relayed quietly to Mia via her earpiece. "Table 7 is rigged," Alina murmured under her breath as she sipped champagne. "And Table 12 has a signal code for big spenders." Back at the center of it all, Jason entered the casino with an air of authority that drew attention. Dealers greeted him warmly, assuming he was exactly what he appeared to be, a high roller ready to drop serious cash. But Jason's focus wasn't on gambling. It was on getting access to Victor's office. Using the distraction caused by Rico and Alina's efforts, he slipped away from the main floor and headed upstairs, his movements calculated and deliberate. Mia guided him every step of the way, feeding him updates on guard positions and camera blind spots. "Turn left at the corridor," she instructed softly. "There's a keypad lock ahead. I'm disabling it now." Seconds later, the door clicked open, granting Jason entry to Victor's private office. Inside, he found files detailing suspicious financial transactions and recordings of meetings discussing illegal activities. With Maya's help, he planted hidden recording devices throughout the room, ensuring they'd capture any incriminating conversations in real time. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the team worked like a well-oiled machine, each member executing their part flawlessly. There were moments of tension: a security guard wandering too close, a dealer eyeing Elena suspiciously, but nothing they couldn't handle. By the time Jason exited the office and rejoined the main floor, the evidence was secured, and the groundwork for Victor's downfall was firmly in place. Standing near the bar, Jason allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. They weren't done yet, but tonight had gone better than planned. Victor still had no idea what hit him, and soon the truth would come crashing down around him. As the clock struck midnight, Jason and his team were wrapping up their operation. Everything had fallen into place perfectly, almost eerily so. The evidence was gathered, the recordings planted, and Victor remained blissfully unaware that his empire was crumbling beneath him. But just as Jason prepared to leave the casino floor, something unexpected happened. Victor appeared, flanked by two burly security guards, his face tight with suspicion. Jason froze for a split second, but quickly masked his unease with a confident smirk. He had been careful not to draw attention to himself after slipping out of Victor's office, but apparently something had tipped the manager off. Perhaps it was the subtle shift in energy on the gaming floor, or the fact that Rico's distraction had worn thin. Whatever the reason, Victor's sharp eyes landed directly on Jason, narrowing as he approached. "Well, well," Victor sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Look who decided to show his face again. Didn't I make it clear you're not welcome here?" Jason raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Oh, come now, Mr. Langston. Surely you don't hold grudges over spilled drinks." His tone was light, almost playful, but there was an edge to it, a challenge Victor couldn't resist. Victor bristled at the comment, stepping closer until he was inches away from Jason. "You think you can waltz back in here like you own the place, like you're one of them." He gestured dismissively toward the wealthy patrons scattered around the room. "You're nothing but a fraud, pretending to be something you're not." For a moment, Jason considered walking away. After all, they'd already gotten what they came for. The evidence was safe, and the plan was working. But then he remembered why he was doing this in the first place. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about teaching Victor a lesson he'd never forget. And besides, Jason had always thrived under pressure. Leaning slightly forward, Jason lowered his voice, ensuring only Victor could hear him. "Funny thing about pretending, Victor," he said smoothly. "Sometimes people do it better than others. For instance, did you know your little exclusive casino has been caught red-handed rigging games, or that your financial records are, shall we say, less than legitimate?" Victor's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. He opened his mouth to respond, but Jason didn't give him the chance. Pulling out his phone, he tapped a few buttons and turned the screen toward Victor. On it was a live feed of the recordings taken from Victor's own office, conversations between him and his associates discussing illegal schemes, bribes, and cover-ups. Jason watched as Victor's face drained of color, his arrogance crumbling like sandcastles against the tide. "What? How did you?" Victor stammered, his voice shaking. He glanced nervously at the security guards beside him, but before he could issue any orders, Maya's voice crackled through Jason's earpiece. "Security comms are down," she reported triumphantly. "They won't be calling for backup anytime soon." Realizing he was cornered, Victor grew desperate. "This is private property," he barked, trying to regain control. "Get him out of here. Now." The guards hesitated, unsure of what to do without communication from their superiors. Sensing their uncertainty, Jason took a step back, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, gentlemen," he said coolly. "I'm leaving." "But Victor," he locked eyes with the now panicked manager. "Your time's running out. Enjoy these last moments while you still can." With that, Jason turned and walked away, his stride purposeful yet unhurried. Behind him, Victor stood frozen, his mind racing as he realized the gravity of the situation. The evidence was out there, and no amount of money or influence could stop it from coming to light. Outside the casino, Jason met up with the rest of the team near the van where Mia was waiting. They exchanged knowing smiles, adrenaline still buzzing through their veins. "That went better than expected," Elena remarked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "He looked like he was about to pass out." Rico chuckled, lighting a cigarette. "Serves him right for underestimating us." Jason nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We're not done yet," he reminded them. "Tomorrow, the real fun begins." With that, they piled into the van and drove off into the night, leaving Victor and his crumbling empire far behind. The next morning, the city of Las Vegas woke up to chaos, and Jason Statham's plan was front and center. By sunrise, the evidence Mia had collected from Victor's office was already in the hands of investigative journalists, law enforcement agencies, and a few select whistleblowers who specialized in exposing corruption. The recordings revealed everything: rigged games, illegal money transfers, ties to organized crime syndicates, and even threats made against employees who dared question Victor's methods. It was a scandal that would shake the very foundation of Sin City. Victor Langston, however, wasn't aware of the storm brewing around him. At least not at first. He arrived at the casino early, pacing anxiously through the empty halls as he tried to piece together what had happened the night before. How had someone infiltrated his supposedly impenetrable operation? Who was Sebastian Drake? And how had he managed to walk away with damning evidence? Every unanswered question gnawed at Victor until paranoia consumed him. By mid-morning, the first cracks began to show. News outlets broke the story, splashing headlines across TV screens and social media feeds. Exclusive casino exposed for rigging games. Victor Langston linked to money laundering scheme. Reporters swarmed outside the casino, shoving microphones toward stunned patrons and staff. Inside, panic spread like wildfire among the employees, many of whom had suspected foul play but never dared speak up. Now, they scrambled to distance themselves from Victor, some even offering statements to investigators in exchange for immunity. Meanwhile, Jason and his team watched it all unfold from the safety of a nearby diner. They sat in a corner booth, sipping coffee as breaking news alerts flashed on a small television mounted above the counter. Maya leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, a satisfied grin spreading across her face. "Looks like our work is paying off," she said, nodding toward the screen. Rico chuckled, raising his cup in a mock toast. "To justice and a little payback." Elena, ever the quiet observer, glanced at Jason. "What happens next? Do we stick around or disappear?" Jason shook his head thoughtfully. "We're done here," he replied. "Victor's name is mud now. Let the authorities handle the rest." But there was something else weighing on his mind, something more personal. As satisfying as it was to see Victor exposed, Jason knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about sending a message. No one was untouchable, especially those who preyed on others' weaknesses. Back at the casino, Victor's world continued to crumble. Law enforcement officers arrived shortly after the news broke, armed with warrants and questions. They stormed into his office, confiscating files, computers, and anything else that might contain evidence of wrongdoing. When Victor protested, claiming innocence and accusing the investigation of being a smear campaign, the officers simply handed him a folder containing copies of the leaked recordings. His protests died on his lips as he flipped through the documents, each page confirming the depth of his betrayal. As the day wore on, Victor became increasingly unhinged. He lashed out at anyone within earshot, blaming his staff, his business partners, even random passersby for his downfall. But no amount of anger could change the truth. By late afternoon, reporters caught wind of Victor's arrest, a public spectacle captured live on camera. As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Victor looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his own arrogance. That evening, Jason stood on the balcony of his hotel room, watching the neon lights of the Strip flicker below. He felt no joy in seeing Victor humiliated. Instead, there was a quiet sense of closure. Justice had been served, not because Jason sought vengeance, but because he believed in holding people accountable for their actions. Turning away from the view, he grabbed his bag and headed for the door. Tomorrow, he'd be gone, leaving behind only whispers of a man who had walked into a casino, turned the tables, and walked out unscathed. The fallout from the casino scandal hit Las Vegas like a tidal wave, sweeping away everything and everyone connected to Victor Langston's corrupt empire. By the end of the week, what had started as a single leak spiraled into a full-blown investigation that reached far beyond the glittering walls of the casino. Law enforcement agencies uncovered layers of illegal activity, money laundering operations tied to international crime syndicates, rigged gaming systems designed to cheat unsuspecting players, and even allegations of bribery involving city officials who had turned a blind eye to Victor's schemes. Victor, once the picture of arrogance and control, was now a broken man. Arrested in front of cameras and hauled off in handcuffs, He spent his days locked in an interrogation room, sweating under harsh fluorescent lights as investigators pressed him for answers. His expensive suits were replaced with an orange jumpsuit, and his smug demeanor crumbled into desperation. Every attempt to shift blame or negotiate his way out fell flat. The evidence against him was overwhelming. As the story dominated headlines, public outrage grew. People who had lost fortunes at Victor's rigged tables came forward with their stories, recounting how they'd been manipulated and cheated. Some shared tales of financial ruin, while others spoke of lives derailed by addiction, fueled by unfair games. Jason watched it all unfold from afar, scrolling through news articles and social media posts. While he felt no sympathy for Victor, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for the victims caught in his web. But Jason wasn't content to simply sit back and let the chaos run its course. He knew that true justice meant more than just exposing corruption. It meant helping those who had suffered because of it. Using part of the funds recovered during the investigation, money traced back to the casino's illicit activities, Jason anonymously donated a substantial sum to local charities focused on gambling addiction recovery programs. He also ensured that smaller payouts were distributed to individuals directly affected by the rigged games, giving them a chance to rebuild their lives. Meanwhile, the casino itself became a ghost town. Stripped of its license and facing mounting lawsuits, the once glamorous establishment closed its doors indefinitely. Employees, many of whom had unknowingly contributed to Victor's schemes, found themselves without jobs. But several former staff members stepped forward to speak out about the toxic culture Victor had fostered. Their testimonies painted a chilling picture of fear, manipulation, and greed, further solidifying Victor's fate. Back in his hotel suite, Jason reflected on the whirlwind of events. What had started as a personal insult had snowballed into something much bigger, a mission to expose injustice and protect the vulnerable. As satisfying as it was to see Victor humiliated, Jason realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. Men like Victor thrived when they thought they were untouchable, but Jason had proven otherwise. No amount of money or power could shield someone from accountability, not when there were people willing to stand up and fight. Before leaving Las Vegas, Jason paid one final visit to the now-shuttered casino. Standing outside, he looked up at the towering structure, its windows dark and empty. The neon sign that once flashed brightly was switched off, leaving only silence where laughter and clinking glasses used to fill the air. For a moment, Jason allowed himself to feel proud, not of what he'd done, but of what he'd helped accomplish. He hadn't sought recognition or reward, but knowing that Victor's reign of exploitation was over brought him peace. As he walked away, Jason received a text message from Mia. Mission complete. Drinks on you next time. Smiling to himself, he replied simply, anytime. With that, Jason disappeared into the crowd, ready to move on to whatever adventure awaited him next. But as he boarded a plane later that evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that this experience had changed him. It wasn't just about taking down a bad guy. It was about reminding himself why fairness mattered, why standing up for others was worth the risk. And though he didn't know it yet, this wouldn't be the last time Jason Statham would step into the role of an unlikely hero. Jason Statham leaned back in his seat on the plane, gazing out the window as the lights of Las Vegas faded into the distance. The city that never slept was now just a distant glow beneath the clouds, but its energy still lingered in his mind. He had come to Vegas for a break, only to find himself embroiled in a high-stakes game of wit and strategy. What started as a personal insult from Victor Langston turned into something much bigger, a lesson not just for one man, but for anyone who thought they could bend the rules without consequence. As the plane climbed higher, Jason allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He thought about the team he'd worked with, Mia's brilliance, Rico's charm, Elena's sharp instincts, and how seamlessly they had operated together. Each of them brought something unique to the table, proving once again that success wasn't about going it alone. It was about trust, teamwork, and shared purpose. They weren't bloodthirsty vigilantes or reckless troublemakers. They were people who believed in doing the right thing, even when it meant taking risks. But this experience wasn't just about others. It also reminded Jason of who he was at his core. Years ago, he'd left behind a gritty world of underground fighting and street survival to build a life where he didn't have to rely on brute force to solve problems. Yet here he was, using those same skills, adaptability, quick thinking, and resilience, to take down someone like Victor. It made him realize that while he may have changed over the years, certain traits remained constant. His determination to stand up for what was fair, his refusal to let arrogance go unchecked, and his ability to turn challenges into opportunities. By the time the plane touched down in Los Angeles, Jason felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He stepped off the aircraft and into the warm California sunshine, ready to return to his normal life. But deep down, he knew things weren't entirely normal anymore. This trip to Vegas had awakened something in him, a renewed sense of purpose and a reminder that sometimes stepping up made all the difference. A few days later, Jason received a package in the mail. Inside was a small envelope containing a handwritten note from Mia. "Thanks for reminding me why we do what we do. Justice might not always be flashy, but it's worth fighting for. P.S. Still waiting on that dinner." A smile spread across Jason's face as he tucked the note into his pocket. She was right. It wasn't about the drama or the headlines. It was about making sure people like Victor couldn't keep exploiting others without facing consequences. That evening, Jason attended a charity gala hosted by one of the organizations he'd anonymously supported after exposing Victor's crimes. Walking through the crowded room, he listened to heartfelt speeches from individuals whose lives had been impacted by gambling addiction. One woman shared her story of losing everything to rigged games, only to receive unexpected help that allowed her to start over. Though she didn't know it, some of that support had come directly from Jason. Hearing her words filled him with quiet pride, not because he wanted credit, but because he knew he played a part in helping her rebuild. As the night wound down, Jason slipped out unnoticed, blending into the shadows as he often did. He wasn't one for the spotlight, preferring to let actions speak louder than words. Back in his car, he checked his phone and saw another message from Mia. "So, when are you calling us for round 2? He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Round 2. Maybe someday. For now, though, he was content to focus on the present, knowing that wherever life took him next, he'd carry the lessons of Vegas with him. Driving home under the starlit sky, Jason felt a familiar calm settle over him. He didn't need fame or fortune to feel fulfilled. He just needed to know he was making a difference, however small. And as long as there were people willing to challenge injustice, Jason knew he'd never truly be done fighting. After all, justice wasn't vengeance, it was balance. And Jason Statham, he was just happy to tip the scales.